It's time for PotTalk with Joe Barton.
I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. Got little pots of pot spread out all over the lot, 'cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Well, I got the seed from Mexico. Stick it in some dirt and let it grow. Put it in my garden with my peppers and my peas, and I get all the smoke I need to breathe. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. We'll keep it where no one can see, so let's keep this between you and me. But I'm growing marijuana in my yard. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. I can't tell I'm boss or I'll get fired. I don't grow much, just what I use. I work all day, and when I'm through, I smoke some marijuana from my yard. Now the policeman wants to talk to me. He says, how you gonna smoke up all that weed? He says, money's what you're in it for. Don't you know we're in a war? I'm gonna haul your ass downtown with me. I said, hey man, what is it to you? How do I infringe on what you do? Well, I beg your pardon if you're offended by my garden, but I just can't grow Prozac in my yard. So I grow my own medicine in my yard. I give some to my neighbor for his heart. Share it with my grandma and keeps it from her son, 'cause we all know that stuff's against the law. Well, now there's nothing growing in my yard, 'cause cops took all my land and both my cars. Now I have to buy my pot from a teenager in the parking lot who's growing marijuana in his yard. Oh, anyone can grow it in their yard. Hey, I can show you how, it ain't hard. Never mind the president, let's overgrow the government and all grow marijuana in our yard. Let's grow some marijuana in our
Hello, here we are doing another episode of Pot Talk, and we want to remind all you people out there, too many of our brothers and sisters are sitting in jail for marijuana, and we want you to do something about it. Start writing to politicians, tell them this has got to stop. They're ruining kids' lives. A kid busted for marijuana can't get funding to go to college, and that's
scholarships.
yeah, they can't get scholarships, so that's hurting all our kids just for getting busted for a little bit of pot when the government knows. In fact, in New York, in 1974, when they supposedly repealed the Rockefeller laws, our legislature said marijuana has little harmful effect or no harmful effect at all for marijuana use. Yet they then said they were going to decriminalize 2 ounces. How many people have been busted for 2 ounces and it hasn't been decriminalized? That's all bull. Many kids have gotten busted for less than 2 ounces, and they've had their lives destroyed, have been put on probation, gone to jail. The courts pay no attention to what the legislature said, and even that, if the legislature says it has no harmful effects, then why is it illegal even if you had pounds of it? And why do they say, oh, it's not harmful, but you can only have 2 ounces? Well, if a person wanted to grow it in their backyard, we'd all know that the oil from marijuana cures quite a few diseases. So if you wanted to make enough oil to cure some diseases, you need to grow pretty much pot. It takes a pound of marijuana to make 50 ounces of oil. So even the legislature with their 2 ounces is bogus when they admit that it has no harmful effect. If it has no harmful effect, why are they putting people in jail for marijuana? And real soon, hopefully, Dana's going to call, but Dana's a bit flaky when it comes to calling on time. He'll give you a little information on the marijuana thing that's going on down in New York, the pot parade, which he used to run every year, but then they put Dana in jail for marijuana. He was supplying medical marijuana to different people, and they arrested him and put him in jail, and we'll have him talk about that when we get him on the line.
I wonder if he's working with the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies called MAPS, and with the
I doubt it.
Hefter Research Institute, of which Dr. Ken is a co-founder. Wasn't he doing something to get people off of heroin? It was some kind of...
Cures Not Wars.
What was it? What was he working?
Cures Not Wars was the organization that he ran to.
Right.
But he had one drug that he was using.
Ibogaine.
Ibogaine.
Yeah. I didn't
which
hear
they
that
didn't mention in that on the other show. They didn't mention Ibogaine at all.
In this article, it talked about ketamine and MDMA. Does Ibogaine work for depression?
It's supposedly a cure for addiction. It's another psychedelic cure for addiction. I think, as I remember it, it was once you took Ibogaine, you didn't want to get high for a long time, I think is how it worked.
And it did make people more cheerful, and it did uplift spirits.
Here he is.
Well, are you there, Dana?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We've been telling people that you're now restarting up the pot parade. Why don't you give the people up here a little information? You're on Woodstock Television and Woodstock 104
FM.
That's great. Well, we do want people to come down for the parade. It would not be fair to the people who kept it going in my absence to say that I'm restarting it.
Oh, all right. I wasn't aware that they kept it going, but that's good.
So you have to keep it going to basically it's grandfathered in.
But that's May 1st.
Nope.
May 2nd.
It's always the first Saturday of May.
Oh, all right.
So every year is different. Every year is different.
But this year
last year was the 3rd.
This year it's the 2nd.
Right.
And
But it's just a Saturday. When it turns to May, look for the Saturday and you'll find us.
Well, where is it going to be this year?
Well, the actual rally after the parade is in Union Square, which has been for a few years. The start this year is at 32nd and Broadway, just a corner, right next, kind of opposite Greeley Park.
Okay.
And we're going to wrap around that corner. The front of the parade is going to extend down to 31st Street, and the parade back of that point is going to go. We're going to put these different contingents together, right? And they're going to go back against traffic. It's weird. On 32nd Street between 5th and 6th. So, actually, there's a court decision that we can't ever march up 5th Avenue against traffic, even though people did it on December 17th. So the cops can ignore the court decision that they went to a lot of trouble to get anytime they want.
You're leaving a lot of dead air here, Dana. Just keep talking.
If you don't, I will. We just read a long article
Ask the questions.
Okay, we just read a long article about how illegal drugs are treating mental illness, and I asked my colleagues here about the work that you were doing with one that was not mentioned. They mentioned LSD, they mentioned ketamine, they mentioned psilocybin, and they mentioned marijuana, but they didn't mention ibogaine.
Ibogaine.
Right. Well, that, we just had an experience today where this guy got back to me and said, there was this group of people, and they wouldn't really come clean as to who they were, but they didn't want me calling them up. And he said there were politically correct drugs, and he's referring to MDMA.
Right. That's what this article was about.
And MDMA doesn't work as well for post-traumatic stress disorder as ibogaine.
And
ibogaine is mostly known because it stops heroin in basically 30 minutes. I mean, it basically... What is your name? I'm sorry.
Mrs. Barton?
Paula Gloria. That's Paula Gloria, my wife, Paula.
Paula Gloria. Okay,
yes.
Paula. From the general public, they know from like the Law and Order Special Victims Unit episode where the guy takes ibogaine and gets off of heroin overnight, that it's good for heroin. They don't know what else it's good for. It's also good for cocaine and crystal meth. Okay, no surprise there, because those are at least drugs. What's really surprising is it gets to be good for a bunch of other stuff. It gets to be good for bipolar and post-traumatic stress disorder. That's because it regenerates dopamine neurons. It causes dopamine neurons that are damaged to grow back. And the really exciting thing that we just found was that extremely low doses of ibogaine reversed Parkinson's disease. So we had a guy who heard about this on the radio and got in touch with us. He's in the African-American community. And somehow he got his hands on root bark capsules. Now, it didn't get rid of his tremor, which is unfortunate. Apparently, the tremor represents a kind of an end stage of damage that cannot be reversed. But his walking, his gait, and his diction are improved. This is a big deal because,
of course,
Parkinson's disease is the second most prevalent neurodegenerative disorder after Alzheimer's. And it's very low dose. Far too little to have a psychedelic effect, far too little to block potassium channels, which is the reason that when you give ibogaine, you have to give it in a hospital or a clinic because it has effects on the heart. So we found out that just 4 milligrams, you can't even see 4 milligrams, Joe.
Yeah, I know.
4 milligrams is so little, it's like a speck. It's a microscopic amount. 4 milligrams of ibogaine twice a day. So after 30 days, 240 milligrams. About 1/6 or 1/7 of what we have to give for heroin, all in one sitting. So this is a huge discovery. The other things that ibogaine are good for are antiviral, antibiotic, anti-tumor, and antifungal effects. And also it does something to autoimmune disorders like Crohn's and multiple sclerosis. So if you have AIDS, I'm not supposed to say this, but I will say that I can say that the government is actually studying the synthetic ibogaine that they came up with in Albany. Stanley Glick came up with this other thing called 18MC. That is being studied to see what it will do to HIV in Brazil. But I will tell you off the record on the radio that I have talked to Norina Walls, who keeps very careful notes, and she's taken cases where people had full-blown AIDS and reversed them to HIV. And this has to do with the fact that there's an autoimmune component in AIDS. With AIDS, some of the effects of AIDS are not just because your immune system is all screwy, but because your body is attacking itself. It's trying to get rid of the virus, and it's kind of like an allergic reaction with the effects of the virus, which are not good. And that's, for instance, what screws people up with multiple sclerosis. So we've got some cases where people's MS dramatically improved. So, these are also conditions, some of them, that people use medical marijuana for. And I have to be, as a person who's been for pot for 50 years, I have to come clean and say ibogaine may work better for some of these things than good old marijuana. But I would much rather smoke marijuana. And as soon as I get off parole, you can bring me a fatty Joe.
And I will. And why don't you, while we're on this subject of marijuana, why don't you tell some people out there about your bus? I'm always telling people that we want to free all marijuana prisons. We don't want any more going in jail.
My big problem was I ran into a place where they said you can't be a medical marijuana activist because there's no such thing as medical marijuana. And that was like, it was strange. It was in Nebraska where you kind of expect them to be somewhat backwards, as Wahoo. But it was also in the next county over from Madison, Wisconsin. I was busted twice because patients don't stop needing marijuana just because somebody has a legal problem. And they gave me ultimately 2 years. We fought them to a draw. They gave the guy who didn't fight them 18 months. But see, I'd already done 9 months when I got them 2 years. And that 9 months, unfortunately, they gave me milk every morning for breakfast. You get awful hungry if you don't eat, right?
Been there, done that.
So I would eat the milk, and I kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker until I had a heart attack. The day they were going to take me to prison, fell over dead. For 3.5 minutes, my heart stopped. Then they revived me, but they had to put me on induced coma, which is very expensive. And after they'd run up a bill of $114,000, the county cried uncle and gave me the appeal bond they hadn't been willing to give me all that time. And I was out. I was actually, my die-in was the most effective, my most effective civil disobedience I ever did. I was actually out, but then they reversed, they reneged on the promise to suspend the sentence.
Once you looked healthy, huh?
Well, no, it was just they got pressured by Nebraska. Mm. Nebraska was crazy. Nebraska basically took the position that I was Al Capone. Nebraska and that one lady from Danielle Meister, who recommended 4 and 4 in Wisconsin. But she was talking to the people in Nebraska. And they had a vendetta that went back to this federal case in 1979 where all the charges were thrown out against this 24-person conspiracy because of illegal wiretaps. Now, we tend to think that, when the government, breaks the law, NSA, Snowden, that's a bad thing, right? That, they should not be able to bring this stuff into court because they got it illegally, right?
They do it all the time.
No, these guys said that was just a technicality, right? So I should have gone to prison then, and they were like, they've been upset ever since. And this is the basic problem. The government in this country is very upset about me.
Well, they have a vendetta against a lot of us.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point I'm trying to say is, if you really want to do something, come out to the parade. We're also doing stuff in the 2 weeks before, calling the 2 weeks the extravaganza.
What are you doing? Tell people.
Well, I think there's going to be a press conference Sunday the 19th in Foley Square, announcing run up. Normal's doing a political panel, 420, and I also understand there's some unscripted smoke-ins going on somewhere in the city. I can't really say where, but you could probably find out. 420, right? Then we're going to have a thing on Wednesday. Let me see. I should really memorize this stuff. I know that Wednesday, I think we're doing our thing on the history of marijuana prohibition, connecting bad people from Adolf Hitler to Joseph Goebbels to Harry Anslinger to Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. Against such people as John Kennedy, who of course was a medical marijuana smoker.
Really?
Yeah, he had very bad back, and he smoked pot. And,
like the Pope.
Well, the thing about JFK was that a lot of people suspect that it wasn't just that he was against the war in Vietnam. And they really wanted to go into Vietnam, and they felt that after the Bay of Pigs, he couldn't be relied upon. It was a cultural thing. They just didn't like him. And, he smoked pot and fucked Marilyn Monroe. He was a hippie, in other words.
And I know for a fact he also took LSD.
Yeah, well, his brother actually came out. His brother was a friend of, he kind of like got shot under mysterious circumstances. His brother was a friend of Allen Ginsberg, who went on the television in the summer of '68 saying marijuana is less harmful than tobacco. So somehow every time, as long as like Anslinger was alive, things kept happening to people, and as long as J. Edgar Hoover was around, things kept happening to people who bucked the orthodoxy, and they weren't pretty, So they were going to have like a thing about that, and then there's going to be a series of a dance event on Friday the 24th. There's a party on the 25th. There's another party at La Rev.
Where it is going to be held?
Well, go to our website and you'll see them.
What's your website?
Tell people your website.
Well, they have the cannabis culture. They have the cannabisparade.org and also Cures Not Worse. Cures-not-worse.org.
I'll get this in.
There's going to be not a high times party. It's not a high times party, but there's going to be a party hosted by some leading personalities in the magazine who are going to
have fun.
Well, no, they're going to there's going to be a party in a place that's smoke friendly. Let's put it that way, where we're going to be able to raise money to defray the cost of the parade.
Dana, I'd like to compliment
during the week, and we're going to end up being at the parade the morning of around 11 o'clock in the morning on May 2nd. I want everybody to come and participate. If you can, we'd like you to make a little contribution per marcher, because it costs money to put it on, but you don't have to. In the Pride Parade, by the way, they were getting $2.50, and they just increased it to $10 a person. But, we're only asking for $2.50 if you could pay it. And we got some interesting people down in it's Dan Fogler, the guy who did movies on peyote. James Lane, who is running against the guy who would indict Garner. We're supposed to have a Cannabis Cup band. I don't have a list in front of me, but we have got some great speakers and great musical acts. So it'll be a great day. I want everybody to come. What else do you want to know?
Well, I was hoping to hear a little more about your bust, how it all went down, and...
Well, there was a problem. It really was because this guy didn't want to go. And when people don't want to do something, they don't prepare properly. So we were a little nervous because we had been stopped the day before with a headlight and talked our way out of it.
Yeah. I don't understand what you just said, but...
That was really what did us in. Somebody was ill-prepared. And the second time, we had a fellow that just needed to stop and pee. And he didn't tell me when we were in Dubuque. When we could have stopped, he announced it like, he said, "You mean there's no rest areas in Wisconsin?" "No, there's no rest areas here, man." So we had to stop in a little town. And there was a hyperactive cop who, was looking for people who might have been, imbibing a few drinks. It was already 10 to 10. He saw an out-of-state plate and decided to check us out.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they always like the out-of-state.
It was really too bad about the guy with the we needed to pee, though, because he got bladder cancer and died. He was a medical marijuana patient. As soon as they took away his medicine, he got galloping cancer and died. Terrible.
Was he
But they
smoking?
don't care if they kill patients. Actually, there's a certain faction of the anti-marijuana people who advocates the death penalty for pot. Let's just be brutally frank.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. We
want
do
all marijuana people to die.
It's insane. We do. I've done many. My show's called PotTalk, and I've covered this issue, and about Anslinger and how it's all been a criminal operation right from the very inception.
Well, there was a direct link. Turns out the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was doing its own diplomacy. There was a direct link to Joseph Goebbels in the Ministry of Truth in the Third Reich. And they had a theory that jazz was conditioning people to want to smoke pot because of the grace beats, because the extra beats involved the slowing down of time. This was making people crave time dilation, or acclimatizing people, so that they would then smoke pot. And they were convinced that this was a Jewish plot. Obviously, Benny Goodman, right?
Wow.
That this was a Jewish plot to get white women to have sex with black jazz musicians
And Jews.
to miscegenate the white race on purpose, so that you could destroy the moral fiber of America and Germany, where jazz was very, very popular and where they hated it. You remember the thing in Casablanca where they start singing the Marseillaise? And Major Strasser gets really upset, and he says, "This place is to be closed at once." Captain Reynolds says, but everybody's having so much fun. I can't close it. And he says, "Yes, much too much fun." Kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West, right?
Yeah, fun's illegal in America.
And he said, find an excuse. And Reynolds thinks of it, and he says, "I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here." And the guy walks up to him and gives him his money from the roulette table. So, basically they were just, these people have always been against fun. It's that simple. In the 50s, they had a huge mass paranoid movement about rock and roll music.
Yep, I remember that.
Burning records.
Yep. So, I don't know. I know that today we have a lot of religious extremists in the world who want to come along and tell you what you can do and can't do.
And no place in the Bible does it say, God said you can't have fun.
Right. But, there's these people who will cut your head off if you disagree with them religiously. And the only possible upside to this is that, some other guys who formerly worked for the narcotics police, if marijuana is legalized, may be sent to fight ISIS.
Well, Dana...
In that case, the ISIS and the narcs will kill each other off.
Dana,
what a plan.
I'll tell you, you keep saying legalization. I'm 100% against legalization. I want repeal of a law that's never been. You should know as well as anybody, if they legalize it, it just means more regulation. And they're going to regulate it so that the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors can supply it, and the person growing it in their backyard is still going to be going to jail. Legalization is not the way to go. We want repeal of a law that was unconstitutional from its inception.
Well, that's actually the issue right now. This week, they're publishing the regulations under the medical marijuana law that got passed.
Which is the worst law in the country here in New York.
They will not allow you to have marijuana. And I was at a venture capitalist thing on Wednesday night where they're going to site a grow facility near you, right near Woodstock. And they have to pay $200,000 for the license, and they have to invest all this money. And it's going to be one of only 5 in the state.
And the urgent task force is going to supply it
with
Joe's pot.
Well, no. What's going to happen is they're going to only. You're going to have to basically buy. You're going to have to buy
a license,
either wax or oil, right? You're not going to be able to have pot because you might grow that,
And you can't smoke it.
I see.
You can't smoke it.
And you got to get it from a doctor, and only 5 hospitals are going to be able to be able to supply it. It's the worst medical marijuana law in the country.
On top of that, Joe, your insurance will not pay for it.
Oh, God.
So who will be able to afford it?
Right.
And it's a very limited number of diseases that can actually qualify you to get it.
Yeah, well, though they have a safety valve. But look, we're trying to have a city council hearing to figure out how we can get an opt-out here, a series of waivers. Now, I got in a lot of trouble. Again, I do these politically incorrect things. You remember Bernard Goetz?
Yeah.
Bernard Goetz, frankly, freely admits he screwed up 30 years ago, right? In the subway incident. He says if he had it to do over again, he wouldn't have done it that way, or he probably just wouldn't have gone on the subway that day. I mean, nobody wants to be approached by, 4 guys with a big screwdriver ready to, stick it in your ribs if you don't give them your money. But he was in the park, and this cute woman approaches him and wants to smoke some pot, and he had a little pot and smoked pot with her. And she kept trying to buy it from him, and he wouldn't sell it. He wouldn't sell it. Well, of course, the script. She was a narc, and he got busted. But she wouldn't sign the complaint because she felt bad, and she knew who it was. And he wouldn't take any money for the pot. So what happens is they proceed anyway. They brought him back to court 6 times with no signed police complaint. This went on for a long time. At least one of these times, our district attorney is super liberal, Cyrus Vance, showed up in court. So I guess he didn't read the file. Anyway, I bump into Cyrus Vance at Michelle Alexander's lecture at the Union Theological Seminary. And I asked him, I says, how about reinstating the policy of Robert Morgenthau, which was not to prosecute the bona fide distribution of medical marijuana under appropriate circumstances to seriously ill patients? And he would look at that, but then when I tried to follow up on it, they got vetoed by somebody in the office. So now we got him. Basically, this is actually prosecutorial misconduct. His office broke the law, and Bernie is suing him.
They do it all the time.
Yeah, but the point is, this is a high-profile case, and this is something that all these right-wing white people, they kind of like Bernie Goetz, So this is very embarrassing, and all we want from Cyrus Vance, given that the new law won't even come into effect for 18 months, is to reinstate the previous deal, which is we had buyers clubs that you could get marijuana, and I was supplying the marijuana for $3 a gram, which is going to be way, way less than what it's going to be under legalization.
For sure.
And
you wonder why you got busted.
It seems a little bit, just not very charitable. This big liberal district attorney to refuse to take away the threat. I mean, here's the lady that came out and testified on my behalf. She's got multiple sclerosis, right? She was in pain. She came and testified on my behalf. Why does she have to live in fear? Can't he just say, okay, I'm just not going to go after medical marijuana patients. If you got a card from another state, if you got a bona fide condition, you got some pot somewhere, I'm not going to go after that that patient. I'm not going to go after the person who goes to get the pot, because, I mean, some of these people are in the hospital and, you know, they've got cancer chemo, right? They can't get the pot. So I just, you know, think that, like, there's something seriously wrong here. And instead of, like, agreeing with me that, you know, Vance needs to clean up his act, Bill Weinberg is harassing me for allowing Bernie Goetz to talk about his case to the newspaper at all. So I made him the poster child for medical marijuana, or for marijuana. And, you know, I wasn't the one that, like, framed Goetz and put him in the paper. You know, he got this whole second life, right? Not as a subway gunman, but as the marijuana crusader. That was because they persisted in a bad faith prosecution. I mean, they could have looked at the complaint. Hey, it's not signed. We better forget about this, you know. But no, they went on for almost a year. They kept it going. They made a big story about it in the Daily News and the New York Post.
But Dana, every arrest is actually a citizen's arrest. There has to be a bona fide complaint. It's not that a policeman needs to go out and fill a quota. I mean, no, that's what it's degenerated to.
Yeah, but that's the broken windows thing. Quotas. You know? I agree, you know, like, but what I'm saying is, Goetz has actually generously given us money to do the event. He's given more money than anyone. High Times has yet to give us any money at all.
Well, I'm not thrilled with High Times
Weinberg
myself.
High Times. That I'll let people know that. Goetz has given us thousands of dollars.
Will Goetz speak?
Huh?
Will he speak?
No, he's not being asked to speak. He doesn't even want to speak. He's supporting the cause because he supports the cause.
I just would like you to hear him.
Well, sometime I'll introduce you to the guy. You can, you know, he's all right. I mean, he's not like the most brilliant conversationalist in the world, but, you know, he's got
Unlike you.
Iconoclastic things. He's an old phone freak. Remember when you knew me in the 70s, Joe?
Yep, I remember.
Remember the paper, Hipster Times, they had the phone code in it?
Yes, I remember that.
It was the era of the blue box.
Yep,
red box,
I had one
black
myself and the black box, and I made a lot of phone calls with that black box.
Right.
You take phone calls with a black box.
And Captain Crunch.
Right.
Whatever happened to Captain Crunch?
Told me to go out and meet Steve Jobs, and I didn't do it. Instead, I fronted the pot to some junkies. Lost my money. And decided to start the Ibogaine movement. So,
I remember when you stopped doing cocaine. Do you remember how that happened?
yes, I do. But look,
He remembers. You've revealed all these other secrets. Why
the
not
point
spit
is,
that out?
the point is, you did me a favor, Joe.
Why don't you tell my audience?
Who
Come on,
couldn't do
Dana.
anything?
Dana.
Remember the people around Knucklehead?
Yeah, tell my audience how.
Remember all the people? No, I didn't need to go with that. Remember one thing is, remember all the people who worked at Sunset Studios,
Yeah.
where the people from like the Soho Weekly News were shooting up heroin on the couch with Johnny Thunders.
Yeah.
Those guys, you couldn't make any money because you looked around and it was 10 pounds of pot was missing.
Come on, Dana.
Late night radio at its finest, huh, Randy?
Yeah, anyway, the point is,
Tell my audience. I really want this story out there.
Come on, you said High Times isn't coughing up for the pot
Tell my
parade.
audience how you got cured of cocaine.
Well, I don't know whether it was a cure. Just every time I tried to do it after that, I got a terrific headache.
I'll do it.
But you don't remember the line I gave you?
Look,
That you were on the floor?
What were you doing? What were you doing with a bunch of? What were you doing with a bunch of cocaine anyway, Joe?
No, he put LSD in it.
Teaching people like you not to do cocaine. I put so much LSD, you snorted it, you were on the floor flapping like a fish.
I walked out. It didn't even come on until I got to the next stop.
No, I remember you crawling down my stairs.
No, I wasn't quite there.
Well, that's not how I remember it.
Well, your memory's a little hazy then, but that's all right. I mean, it did come on.
Hey, I'll cover you a little
And
here.
I said, you know what I said
What?
to myself? I said, this reminds me of the time I had some LSD with cocaine in it.
We better call Dr. McKenna here at the Hufter Research Institute.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, look, I'll tell you the truth too. Alcohol screwed me up far more than anything.
Yeah, I can believe that.
The last 9 months, I was in jail. I kept thinking about my friend George Beer, the guy who wrote the original for the book The Emperor Wears No Clothes. He wrote this book. It's called in German, Von Hemp is to Read, when the subject is hemp. This guy was a fascinating guy. He was a gay Euro-communist who was the son of the German Air Marshal, Air Defense Marshal, under Goering, under the Luftwaffe. And his mother would have been the Empress of Austria, and his father was a German industrialist who was big in the Nazi Party. And his dad told him, he said, the day we lost the war was the day we began it. But he spent the last 10 years of his life half paralyzed in bed, having lost half his body because he just drank too much. And I have a history of stroke in my family. So I just decided when I get out, I know from watching people who've done ibogaine that the whole key to quitting anything is to quit the way I quit cocaine. You've got to totally quit.
Yep.
Can't just do a little bit. If you want to quit something, this is the Beal one-step program. Actually quit. Surprise, surprise! Actually quit, and you will actually quit. You have to go to meetings, you know. You don't have to become part of a cult. You don't have to go to
Meetings
jail.
made you want to go back to it.
But I'll also tell you the truth is, guess what? Ibogaine won't work unless you actually quit.
Right.
Right. So, you know, I got out of jail, and I just said, I'm just not going to take the first drink. You know, naturally I wanted to get out of jail. A lot of people would celebrate. Somebody came over here and offered me some Irish whiskey when I got back to New York. I'd already been out of jail for 3 months, and I said, no, man. I quit. And some days, I still, kind of, miss the taste of a certain kind of beer. I'd like to have a glass of wine. But then I think about having congestive heart disease with a hangover every day. And just the fact that I'd lost so much time that I could have used to do other stuff.
Right.
Drinking. Oh, man.
Oh, I thought you meant prison.
Well, that
I'm
too.
really happy now. I'm really happy now a clean and sober Beal.
I never thought I'd hear that.
Oh.
Well, it's not. I'm going to go back to smoking pot when I can. When I don't have to worry about the urinalysis. But
by the way,
I'm not going to drink again. I want to go back to the way I was when I was in my mid-30s, and I'm a guy that I don't drink yet.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, there's someone. The person who owns this radio station is another old friend of yours, someone you've known for a long time, Randy Steele. Say hello, Randy.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Randy, what's going on?
Well, you're hearing it. You're on the other end of the phone. We've been doing this now for about a year or so, and not on the air, but getting it ready.
People like actually mentioned you. We want to have a transgender contingent in the parade.
Well, I don't know if I know enough to actually do a contingent, but we'll try to make it down.
Okay. Well, that would be good.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that we used to know down there did too much of the wrong drugs themselves.
Yeah, well, you got to be careful about that stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty much the only drug that's actually like safe you could do and not like pay the piper is good old marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in agreement on that.
Unfortunately, most of the other stuff is fairly toxic. Bad for you, whereas pot is actually seems to be pretty benign. So that's why I'm for it. I'm against. I'm against people who are against pot, because these people, if they're actively engaged in trying to imprison me, as far as I'm concerned, that's a crime. Because I'm not doing anything. You can't take something that's completely innocent, that doesn't hurt anybody, that doesn't even hurt the person who's doing it, and say, I just decided this morning I woke up, I was on the wrong side of the bed, and from now on everybody who smokes pot is a criminal. That's just totally insane.
Well, it's amazing what
I don't know whether they should be, I don't know what to do to them, but there's something really seriously wrong that these people were ever put in charge of anything.
And unfortunately, people just keep electing these clowns over and over and over again.
It makes no sense. But I think the country's coming around. The only thing I'm really worried about is if we've been in this nice situation. People don't realize they're going to look back on Obama and they're going to say this was the golden age, right? It's like we didn't realize we had with Carter until he was gone, right? And most of the Republicans, except for Rand Paul, look pretty dismal. I know that, like, Scott Walker is from, a state that is, Jesus, is 3% black, but 70% of the people in the prison are black, right? And aside from, like, Milwaukee and Madison, which is like an island, it's a very conservative state, on pot. And, I've been told that Jeb Bush has a pretty bad position on marijuana. Not as bad as Chris Christie. But, I just don't think there's anybody, and Jesus, I just can't really trust Clinton, I mean, basically her friend, Deborah Mash, ripped off Howard Lossoff, tried to steal the Ivergate patent. So...
How is Howard? I haven't seen Howard in many years.
Howard is unfortunately passed.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, and in 2010.
Wow.
February 2010.
I liked Howard. Howard was a nice guy. What a
It's
shame.
about 5 years ago. He was, but the point I'm trying to make is, I guess, you could hold your nose and vote for Hillary, but I don't even know whether you could trust her to have as good of a marijuana policy as we have now. And it isn't like they have a great policy, understand? It's just like benign neglect. You know what I'm saying? They're letting it happen. They're not really reforming the system. This is all going on through the federal. There's this court case that's about to come up in California that's going to make it Schedule 2.
Yeah, I know about
it's
that.
Not. It's what it is we had 3 presidents in a row: Nixon, Reagan, and George W. Bush, who used the power of the White House to stop marijuana from being legalized.
Yeah.
And without that, it'll pretty much happen. But I believe just about any Republican is going to try to mine that vein of Nixon hate politics.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And we're going to end up with another really bad president who's going to try to reverse all the progress we've made and, I don't know, lock up 1 million people, private prisons, FEMA camps. It's like...
Unfortunately, our 2 choices are going to be Hillary and Jeb Bush, and neither one of them are going to be any good.
Well, like I said, basically, I would say Hillary's a little better on the pot thing, just on the pot thing.
Yeah. But God help us for either one of them.
And I noticed the operative word there is little.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it, man. This is terrible. This is what's happened. These guys, I don't know. They squandered all their political capital on this Obamacare stuff, and the Obamacare is actually a plan that Richard Nixon came up with. You know that, right?
No, I didn't know that, but...
It's a Republican plan.
And Romney implemented it.
No, yeah, and exactly. And somehow, they made it, toxic because a Democrat did it. It's their idea. It's their version of, socialism, right? Which is kind of make the insurance companies part of the government, right? Instead of having single payer like they do in Canada or Great Britain. So I just assume I don't mind going to the National Health Service. So I had to wait a little bit. Get good medicine. It would be cheap. I don't know what the big problem is. Socialized medicine. Those doctors all want to make a lot of money and invest in the stock market. Anyway, you guys must have some more questions for me.
We're going to have station identification, right, and drop off channel 23.
Right, we have to, I might as well do that now. We're going to leave channel 23 for the carousel, which will have a lot of programming coming on. And if you want to hear the end of our conversation, tune your radio, your FM radio dial over to 104.1. where we will be at Woodstock 104, continuing our conversation with Dana Beal for a little while. So we're going to leave you here. This is Woodstock Public Access TV, Channel 23, and we say goodnight to you. And now we continue with Dana Beal on Woodstock 104, which is WIOF LP, Woodstock 104.
Dana, you mentioned Knucklehead. Have you seen that scoundrel since you've been out?
Not for a while.
Yeah, I avoid him like the plague.
Well, I will say one thing. He had his moment in history. Nobody has exactly figured out exactly how that incendiary device came to go off in the face of the police in front of number 9. And it still is not even certain that he did it. You know what I'm saying? It's just nobody knows what really happened. But it could have been Hank the Crank, working with Mordecai from the Jewish Defense Organization, in league with Doug Ireland from the Soho Weekly News, because they were all hanging out together, right? And that's one alternative scenario. Then the other alternative scenario is that some junkies from Sunset Studio did it. It's true that Mike Ross set off a firecracker in Alice's face in the front door at number 9 once.
Well, I also put a firecracker on the front door. That was a fad for a little while. Iggy did it.
That was, come on, leave us alone. The point I'm trying to make is, it got out of hand. You know
for sure it got out of hand. No doubt about it.
It got out of hand. And the problem is like, it caused my rent to be tripled. That whole thing, that whole 4 days of insanity, where, there was all kinds of, like, crazy stuff going on in the thing,
Well, I wasn't involved in that.
Lyndon LaRouche's security chief calling up and threatening me before the bombing, making it look like maybe it was LaRouche who did it. It was like, it was just it was a welter of confusion. But then, they got Ralph and Isla. I don't know who knows who did it. But, Isla, ended up spending all the money on cocaine. He got out of jail. He was broke. So he definitely shouldn't have come after me and harassed me to begin with, because it cost him his freedom, and it cost him all of his money, and he ended up divorcing Isla anyway. Isla ended up going with a junkie named Heatherly, getting hepatitis C and AIDS, and dying in terrible pain, which was a tragedy. I will say, Wolf doesn't change much. He's like the picture of Dorian Gray. He doesn't like fucking age. It's amazing. I'm old. I've definitely, I got white hair. I wear glasses now. That's life of...
Dana, you're just more distinguished now.
I'd rather be young and be able to chase girls. Do that other stuff.
I still chase
we're doing
ball,
some great stuff. You know what we're doing now? We're doing this Ibogaine for Afghanistan project. And I'm actually working with a guy
That's youthful
who's got
enthusiasm.
a memorandum of understanding with a hospital in Kabul. And we're going to start importing Ibogaine to Afghanistan, because that's where the heroin is.
Right.
Oh.
That's the biggest, obviously a huge national market for Ibogaine. Unfortunately, there's no money. So we're going to have to get charity to pay for it. So I'm out there trying to push Ibogaine for Afghanistan as a charity. Did you hear about the Ibogaine clinic that's doing Scott Disick?
Is that the one in Mexico?
Kourtney Kardashian.
Is that the one in Mexico?
Yeah. Well, no, this is the one in Costa Rica.
Oh.
What's happened is this friend of mine, Charles Johnson, is hooked up with Mugenda, who sold Dmitry Mugenis his last clinic. And somebody from Passages, Malibu, a doctor from Passages, Malibu, and a guy with $60 million that Mugenda treated. We started this very expensive place that cost $2,000 a day to go there. Of course, unlike the other places that cost ridiculous amounts to go to, like Hazelden, you only have to go for a week, because it's Ibogaine. Hazelden, you go for 30 days, you pay $1,000 a day, and it doesn't work.
Why's that?
Why doesn't it work? Because 12-step doesn't work. It's just a glorified 12-step program.
Oh, but they're not giving Ibogaine?
And Hazelden? No.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood you.
No, but I always would look at the Passengers Malibu ad, and they would say, this is not a 12-step thing. And I would say, they got an Ibogaine. People are advertising Ibogaine right on television. Well, not exactly. It turned out they didn't have Ibogaine yet, but now somebody connected them with them has taken Ibogaine, and they're people who used to work there are involved in an ibogaine clinic, and they got this guy Scott Disick to go there. So the other thing is we're trying to get a charity going in excuse me, Great Britain. I can't really say anything yet because the people in New York Times is really interested in writing a story, right? And the people in Southern California, which is where these people really are, the clinics in Costa Rica, they've come up. They said they'll come up with like $40,000 to make the ibogaine for Afghanistan thing work. But so I can identify them. The people that we have working in Great Britain haven't really said yes yet. So it's a bad idea to put out, dangle a story out, and then it turns out not to happen. I kind of like has some credibility. Most of this stuff, I'll tell you, will come true. And there's the other percentage of stuff I can't control. So, oh yeah, we're opening a clinic in Nepal.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, we're going to have an ibogaine clinic in Nepal. You got the entire Indian middle class, which is huge, and they've got substance abuse problems.
Really?
Yeah, they all go to Nepal as a tourist destination. So,
and the abused substance of choice is?
Opium, heroin.
Opium.
Yeah, well, all those places have heroin. All of them. So, I get like six more months on the parole, and I'm going to be able to travel. That should be interesting.
Well,
I just want to kind of fulfill Howard's mission of bringing ibogaine to the world. Marijuana seems to be taking care of itself. Wouldn't you say that marijuana would be legal no matter what?
Well, I don't like legal. I want repeal of the law that should have never been.
I understand.
Legal still means people are going to go to jail.
But did you know that on the federal level, marijuana was repealed in 1986? Yet the law made and repealed on the same day is printed with a star, and on the bottom where it says repealed, the printers in collusion with the fraudulent court systems do not print the last line. And the bar goes along with it. Isn't that? Talk about different realities.
I got to see that.
Yeah.
We actually have the documents.
But then again, if you're living in a reality that most people aren't because of media and so on, you wonder how much good does it do if that's the law, but nobody believes that's the law. They go along with the spin.
Well, the courts and the jails make money off incarceration, so that's why it's happening,
Well,
but I find it interesting that you're going to these countries like ibogaine for Afghanistan has a nice ring to it, and it implies that it's got an addicted population, not just an enslaved population that has to produce the heroin for being shipped to more profitable markets. Is that the logic?
Well, there's a huge amount. It's only like 6% of the population is addicted to heroin.
And over here, how much is it?
Far less than 1%.
Uh-huh.
No, it's terrible. It's really truly terrible situation. 1.6 million heroin addicts in a population of about 30 million.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just very sad.
Anyway, Dana, we're going to cut this off about now, but besides this playing on Woodstock television and here on FM 104, I'm also going to play this on my show down in New York City, where I do PotTalk on Manhattan Neighborhood Network on Saturday night.
So anything you want to get in editing, get to us. I'll look
Well,
it over.
no, the main thing I want to tell people is just be there on May 2nd.
What
11
time?
in the morning.
11 in the morning at 34th?
At the corner of 32nd and Broadway.
Okay.
It'll stretch down to 31st and Broadway and around the corner east on 32nd Street.
Okay.
So it'll be maybe that long block and a short block on Broadway, if and we're going to have some sound there ahead of time. And then, of course, there'll be all kinds of entertainment and edifying and instructive speakers.
Right.
At the Union Square Canvas event.
We'll be there, and I'll give you a call tomorrow sometime in the afternoon.
And I'll use the nice graphics. Your posters were beautiful.
Yeah, we need. If you want to send us some stuff, we recorded this audibly, but when Paula edits it, she'll edit stuff on visually for television down in New York. So if you want to send us some stuff, when I call you tomorrow, I'll give you her email, and you can send us posters or pictures or anything. I'll call you tomorrow, but we're going to sign off now. Have a good night, Dane. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, bye.
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 There it is. You've been listening to PotTalk with Joe Barton. Starring Joe Barton. Also starring Paula Gloria. Be sure to tune in next week at this same time on this same stoned out channel. Oh, did I actually say that? For more PotTalk, which is a manifestation production. At this time, Woodstock 104, WIOFLP, Woodstock 104, pardon my shtick, ends this test transmission. Woodstock 104 tests on 104.1 megahertz, channel 281, with a highly effective radiated power of 100 stupendous watts in circularly polarized stereo for your superior listening pleasure or displeasure, depending on what part of town you're in. Antenna Higgett is still 920 feet above Andy Bully's Still So Mean sea level at Five Liars, Bigots, and Friars. Don't go there. Woodstock 104 is owned and licensed to Birds of a Feather Media by an even more reluctant now Federal Communications Commission, Washington, D.C., which is also digitally demanding. Woodstock 104 is also actually Birds of a Feather Limited. Birds of a Feather Media Limited is also licensed to do business as Woodstock 104 by the Secretary of State of the State of New York for purposes of low-power broadcasting. Our snail mail mailing address is Woodstock 104, P.O. Box 104, Woodstock, New York 12498. Until tomorrow, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, have a pleasant, safe, warm, and uneventful evening, and be nice to each other and love each other and the kitties and the doggies and whatever other pet you have. Till then, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.